Welcome to the latest episode of FoodTech Stories. I'm your host, FoodTech marketing expert Megan Thomas. FoodTech Stories features the leaders pioneering new approaches to technology, collaboration, and storytelling in the food tech and ag tech space. Food and agriculture are changing, and fresh ideas and leadership are needed to sustainably feed the growing global population. Join us every other week as we talk to a founder, operator, or visionary in food and agriculture. Today's guest is Chris Bryson, and Chris is founder and CEO of New School Foods, a Canadian-based startup company that is developing plant-based fish. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Megan.
Well, let's jump right in. What led you to start New School Foods?
The genesis story of the company is a little unconventional. I was sort of going through a transition period. I was previously in the e-commerce space and I'd sold my company. I fell into it in some ways. I wasn't planning to start another company, but life has a weird way of throwing you curveballs. While I was going through that acquisition period, I learned about the Impossible Burger. I tried it out and I found it was sort of this incredible experience. And I was just blown away by how people were recreating the sensory experience, which led to the question of why would they try so hard to recreate something that maybe a lot of other people already enjoy and is delicious. That led me deep down the rabbit hole of learning how our food system works, how unsustainable it is. And it felt like this big problem that no one wanted to talk about. You had major industries like electrification and cars that were going towards more sustainable sources. But on the other hand, meat consumption, which is 20% of greenhouse gases, was moving the other direction. Everyone wants to eat more meat. It felt like a big problem. It didn't actually start the company by starting the company. I started out as an angel investor, and just over time, from the thought of one step at a time, sort of pulled into this space.
What did you study in school? Are you a scientist or do you have a different type of background?
I'm not. I'm a closeted nerd. I always wish I'd done an engineering degree or a computer science degree. Probably not a coincidence. I've been drawn into both of those spaces. I did a business degree. I like how my job gives me permission to hang out with smarter people than myself and be in conversations that I don't deserve to be in.
Fair enough. Don't we all, right? So you started to talk about the problem that you're solving. Why plant-based fish? What was so appealing about that specific area of interest?
When we started the company, it didn't get started as tomorrow it's going to be a company and we're going to recruit that person. The way it started was a little bit different in the sense that I had noticed through my time in angel investment that everyone who was in the plant-based industry was going after the problem with the same technology strategy. It became apparent that almost every plant-based company was using the same singular technology to make their products, which seemed like a risky proposition to put all your eggs in one basket. Doesn't seem like the smartest thing to do.
Not a lot of differentiation in the process.
What was mind-boggling to me, the more I learned about this one technology that everyone was using, it's called extrusion. It's effectively a borrowed technology from the pasta and cereal making industry with more bells and whistles added to it. It's not really a purpose-built technology for plant-based foods. It kind of felt like if you build something from the ground up, you might be able to have a more appropriate solution for creating the products that really need to be made. We did fish less because we were trying to make fish. It was more just how do we make muscle fibers from plants? The scientists that I had engaged at the time, we went to a bunch of different food science universities. And I said, I want you to send me your proposals. I'm looking to fund some research to find an alternative to extrusion. A few of them said, well, what's the product application? Can you give us a North Star so that we can think about that sort of end state in mind, as opposed to how can we replace extrusion? So fish was something that we just picked because less people were doing it, but also because it felt like if you could do fish, you could do anything else. Fish is this really complicated macro structure, very defined. If you think about salmon's iconic white lines versus pink muscle tissue structure, and that posed a bunch of different product challenges that would, in principle, be harder to do than some of the other products that we were thinking about. It was more about how can we put a North Star around developing a new technology? And if we felt like it can do that, then maybe we can build a company around this. Salmon is where we're starting.
So you're looking to go to other fish and then to other types of seafood. Is that correct?
Maybe even much further than that.
All right. And what can you share?
If you think about whole cut or meat and seafood in general, everything is muscle fibers and connective tissue. What we've been working on, as much as New School Foods, I think from a customer-facing perspective, is a plant-based seafood company. We really see New School Foods as a company that is developing a scaffolding and texture platform that can create different types of muscle fibers and connective tissue, which we believe in principle can create really anything.
So a lot of versatility in the platform, looking to take it to different applications, which is exciting. When I get the chance to meet listeners of the podcast, they often mention the quality of the production as one of their favorite parts of the show. That praise is due to the team that edits the show, TJG Media. Their team works with the raw audio files of each interview to enhance the quality of the sound, minimize external noise, and cut out the natural pauses that occur in conversation to create each fast-paced episode. Plus, they create engaging short-form videos to promote each episode on social media. Visit tjgmediallc.com to find out more. You've started with the Canadian market. What can you tell us about what you've learned about consumer interest and potential partners so far?
We've decided to start by partnering with restaurants. When I say the word partner, I use that intentionally because we're trying to develop relationships where we can bring the product to them and they can say, oh, this is really great. We like X, Y, and Z, but we prefer if you worked on A, B, and C and made those better. That's exactly the kind of conversation we want to have. I don't think anyone out there has created a product that 10 out of 10 times is going to fool everyone that it's replacing the animal. You can always be better. And if you have those kinds of partnerships where you have that back and forth, that trust and that ability to act on that feedback, then you're going to make a better product. And over time, you're going to have something that really changes the game. We view our primary partners as restaurants, specifically chefs. We've decided to start small. A lot of other companies are like, oh, let's try to sell as many places as possible. I believe in the go slow to go fast strategy. And so working with restaurants has been really phenomenal because it helps us to validate all the things that we're working on in the lab. Sometimes we think we've got something that's like ready for prime time and we take it to the restaurant. This happened last week. We're testing a whole new formulation upgrade and they're like, yeah, we like this, but we don't like that. So if you can fix that first, that would be ideal. It's really, really helpful to develop that trust in that relationship.
Sounds like you're using it today for optimization, but also to get to product market fit and to prove that out.
Yeah. The funny thing about our product, you always take a leap of faith when you're starting. Okay, yes, I think there's a market for this. What we've seen with restaurants, there's definitely no question without it, an unmet need in the market. So when we approach restaurants, we can literally go from not having met the chef to being in their kitchen and cooking within 5 minutes. That's how much of a market gap we have seen.
Fascinating.
You wouldn't think that's the case. We show up with a product and it sort of drives a lot of curiosity and interest because they say, oh, well, like we're already selling fish. And we're like, no, this is not fish. This is plant-based. And it sort of breaks their brain a little bit for a second because we have a product that looks like raw fish. When you cook it, it not only delivers on taste and texture, but also like it really recaptures the cooking experience. And I think that that's an important thing about what we've done. What's cool is that almost every restaurant we go to will say like, what's your plant-based option or what's your vegetarian option? 9 times out of 10, it's a pasta or risotto, right? And I think most of them are looking for something that treats their guests who are vegetarian or plant-based as well as it treats their others. You've seen a lot of vegan and vegetarian restaurants shut down over the last 3-4 years. Those customers are still eating and they're looking for something on the menu. If you come to that restaurant and there isn't an option that feels like they phoned it in, they're delivering kind of a subpar experience. So almost every single restaurant we go to agrees that they need something like this and they don't want it to be a burger.
It provides the opportunity to provide a more premium eating experience for the vegetarian customer. And are they telling you it is patrons who are looking for vegetarian options, or is it folks who are maybe looking to also have a variety of options and maybe looking just to have a meal that happens not to be meat-based? Or is it strictly the vegetarian crowd?
I think it's both, but obviously as a restaurateur, your first immediate thought is like, how do I make sure I don't lose a customer? That's where you start. And then if you can build credibility, then it's like, oh, well, maybe we should promote this a little bit more heavily to our flexitarian customers. I think it's both, but at a minimum, we've definitely seen that restaurants are afraid that they're even losing on a party of 5 because one individual is vegetarian.
And they didn't want the risotto or the green salad, right?
The pasta arrabbiata for the 5th time.
Exactly. I love that you've kind of honed in on what the challenge is. Are you finding that there's a certain restaurant format or a specific cuisine that chefs are particularly interested in your product?
No, and that's been a delight. We realize that the product can work in more types of cuisine than we originally suspected. One of the things that was very intentional about the product is we're not selling a breaded fillet. It is a naked product for all intents and purposes. And that raises the bar, by the way. It makes it a lot more complicated. You don't eat plant-based burger meat on its own as a crumble, but a plant-based fillet, effectively, you need to be able to add salt and oil and have it be delicious. That's difficult. That being said, because it is unbreaded, it allows every single restaurant to put their own spin on it, their own style. What's really nice about it is it allows each chef to get really creative. We've not only seen chefs put together their own sauce or marinade or cooking style and try different cooking methods, but we've seen chefs take our filet and like completely cut it up and create a sushi or create pasta with it. We've been really amazed with the level of creativity that chefs can apply to our product and create dishes that we never even expected it could do.
It sounds like the format you've selected lends itself to versatility. Are you getting any consumer feedback through being in restaurants today?
Not directly, and that's kind of the leap of faith that you take with your restaurant partners, which is why it's important, I think, to be selective in the early days. We monitor the feedback online like crazy people. We've collected every single review that there is out there online about our product, and it is overwhelmingly and stunningly positive.
That's fantastic. I know, having worked with the food service channel, that it can be very difficult to control or influence messaging on premise.
100%.
Do consumers know that what they're consuming is a plant-based fish?
They do. One of the things that works both for us as well as our restaurant partners, we make sure that our product is listed on the menu in a very specific fashion. It says New School, but all in caps, and there's even this slash after the W. And usually there's also the TM sign. It's clear that when it says New School plant-based salmon, that it's a branded product. And that in turn is more likely to motivate the customer to pick up their phone and find out, okay, well, what is this? Why would I eat this? And that can lessen the burden on the server, who might not remember exactly all the selling points. They might not remember the fact that it's got the exact same amount of omegas as salmon, or they might not know that eating salmon actually is a way to consume mercury, which is maybe something you want to avoid. We agree with all of our restaurant partners that framing it in that way is important to let them know that it's a branded product, drives a little bit of consumer interest.
Are you at the point where you're looking to scale up production, or kind of where are you in the cycle?
We literally work on that every single day. Going back to the very beginning, what we started in terms of developing a process that didn't require extrusion, because we worked on this whole novel approach to making plant-based food, that has necessitated us to become our own manufacturer. So we have our own facility with our own assembly line. We are always trying to figure out how can we demonstrate how this is going to scale to be something that really should be used instead of extrusion. So we're working on scaling each individual step within our process every single day, growing our distribution and our number of restaurants every single week. So absolutely.
And I understand you're looking to come into the US market at some point. What can you tell us about that?
It's been interesting, obviously, over the last couple of months. The tariffs come up. At the end of the day, we need to be sold everywhere. And getting into the US market is important because we've actually had quite a bit of interest from a variety of different restaurants, as well as restaurant groups or hospitality groups. That is something that is in our near future coming to the US.
Fantastic. So how big is your team today, Chris?
We're roughly 25 FTEs, full-time employees. And then we have a series of amazing staff members as well who help out on the production line that are in addition to that.
We've talked about chefs and the role that they're playing, kind of a multifaceted role. Do you have other relationships, or maybe are you leveraging other ecosystem resources you believe are helping you to advance toward your goals?
We take all the help we can get. We have a series of outside consultants that we lean on. We have a lot of wonderful investors that we lean on, and different types of investors. We have your standard VC investors that can be great for guidance around what to prioritize and how we can set ourselves up for continued success as we continue that fundraise journey. And then we also have strategic investors like IKEA, who joined us in July of last year, who we have a lot to learn from. They're an incredible company that is very sustainability oriented. There's all kinds of different things, everything from guidance around fundraising to product development to waste strategies to how we're eventually going to have to do LCAs to showcase how our product does better from a greenhouse gas emission perspective relative to the products we're trying to substitute. Short answer is yes. Yeah, we can't do this on our own.
And as I understand it, and I know that there was a recent report that went out about the state of food tech in Canada, and that a lot of your investment for the sector still comes from the US or from other marketplaces.
It does.
So how do you think about the US investment space and how that might interact with you or your food tech peers?
It's a tough question because I'm proudly Canadian. It's interesting when you see how your investors spread out or what countries they come from. At the end of the day, we're not so much fussed about where the investors are based. We're really trying to find people that are mission aligned and that understand the bigger vision of what we're trying to accomplish, and hopefully will be part of it for the long haul. Sometimes they're not going to be in your backyard. I mean, there certainly are going to be cultural differences between the US and any other country. The US has always been an entrepreneur first type culture. Naturally, you're going to see a VC culture that's also a little bit different. But fundamentally, we're just looking for the right partner. So I don't know that all of our investors are necessarily concentrated in the US. I think they're actually quite global. We have investors that are from Europe, from Asia. We have investors from the US, and actually a couple from Canada as well.
I understand that it's kind of under indexes, right, compared to other places. So I'm curious about kind of how those intersections come about. Thank you for answering the question. You're now at kind of at your second startup, your second go around. What, if anything, is different about leading New School Foods versus your e-commerce startup?
I hope none of my friends who are in the software world are listening to this. FoodTech is so much more difficult because there's so many more moving pieces to it. When you're building a physical product, you have to worry about everything from inventory to, like, if you're in manufacturing, to CapEx, to different types of debt funding. Everything is so much more complicated. You have to worry about supply chain. You have to worry about spoilage. You have to worry about, and I'm not even talking about the science behind the product itself. I always sort of joke that in software, the beautiful thing about it is that if you can dream it, you can design it. And if you can design it, you can code it. In food, you have this thing called the laws of chemistry and physics that are up against you.
Biology. Yeah.
Yeah, like it doesn't mean it's possible. In some ways with food, you have to take a larger leap of faith and the R&D cycles are longer. It's just altogether a different type of challenge. There's certainly been a lot of lessons that I think I've been able to carry over, but this is a whole different beast.
It's certainly consistent with what I've heard from CEOs, investors, other stakeholders in the space, right? It's simply different. It's important to take those into consideration. Which aspect of running New School Foods really lights you up?
I just like creating. I don't care what the application is. And that's both at work and at home. There's nothing more satisfying than dreaming something up and then seeing it come to life. Just this week, I saw 2 or 3 innovations that came forward. I can picture how those are going to propagate to the product as well as to the assembly line. Chasing those ideas down and bring them to life is just incredibly exciting and satisfying.
I've enjoyed our conversation. Kind of to wrap us up here, looking to the future, where do you think the food tech space, specifically your sector, where do you think it's going to be in 10 years?
The macro conditions point towards this industry inevitably being a massive one. This industry is going through a necessary correction, maybe a bit of an overcorrection, but at the end of the day, we're not in the food business. For those of us who are in the alternative protein sector, I always tell my team, we're not in the food business, we're in the behavior change business, because we're actually trying to facilitate people changing their dietary choices, things that they've been doing their entire lives 3 times a day. Changing that is an incredibly difficult thing to do. Behavior change startups are the hardest startups. My last company was in the grocery e-commerce space. And I remember back in 2011, when we started it, people saying, oh, remember that web van company, the $1 billion company that went bust? Grocery delivery is never going to happen. Look at the world we live in today, very much a part of society. Behavior change can happen, but it only happens when the friction points are reduced sufficiently. I think you're seeing the same thing with electric cars. Like the EV1 didn't take off because it was a compromise and people want more, not less. We need to get there as an industry in terms of closing the gaps relative to customer expectations. And that means we need to invest in better products, better technology, more R&D. And long term, there really should be a very significant market for this. I think we just need to sort of get through that quote unquote valley of death, as they call it.
Trough of disillusionment. Yes, I know many names for it.
Yeah.
It's certainly consistent with what others have told me as well, which is it will turn around. There will be winners and losers, but absolutely these technologies will be moving forward, which I completely agree with and why I have a podcast about this space. It's fascinating to think about what's possible. Any final comments you'd like to make, Chris, before we wrap up?
I have seen it in the customer's eyes that when you can make them question their assumptions. We've built a product that already in its current version, it's V1, where we get people where their eyes light up, where they think, oh my God, I didn't think that this was possible to do with plants. When you can get people to challenge their assumptions and you can create a wonderful experience, you can create change. And that's why I am eternally optimistic about this industry. I don't think the consumer is the issue. I just think we haven't quite caught up as an industry to consumer expectations. If we can create something that feels like it's not a compromise, that feels like an upgrade, we really can change our food system and we can find ourselves in a better world than we are today.
Obviously, scaling and unit economics play in as well, but These areas are far from dead, and I do think we have really exciting things ahead. Thanks for the time. I enjoyed our conversation, Chris.
Same here, Megan.
We'll talk to you next time. Thanks for joining us today on the latest episode of Food Tech Stories. Be sure and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform and keep an eye out for our bi-weekly episodes. I'm your host, Megan Thomas, founder of Ladris 17. Food Tech Stories is edited by TJG Media.